Therefore, we decided that this time it would be a good idea to have a talk with a person who leads an extensive team here in this country to offer international cutting-edge vision and expertise for the development purposes that are, for the most part, in tune with the United Nations Sustainable Development Goals. Ms. Helena Fraser, the UN Resident Coordinator in Uzbekistan, is our guest this time. So, let's go. Ms. Fraser, you came to this country first in 1993 as a student, and in July 2017 you started here as a UN official. What change, if any, and what continuity did you observe in Uzbekistan's life?
Well, it's an interesting question because, of course, 28 years have passed. And since my first visit to Uzbekistan. And the thing that really echoes throughout 28 years is the warmth and hospitality that I encountered in 1993 and again on arrival here for my official functions with the UN in 2017. The other thing that I think is continuous is the beauty, the colour, the richness of the culture. Of course, culture is eternal in a sense. It evolves, but it is an incredible resource that Uzbekistan has. But there have been many changes. In 1993, Uzbekistan was undergoing a profound economic shock. There was rampant inflation, there was poverty, there was a lot of concerns around food security and so on. And I think my impression of the country then was very much of a country, but going through a very, very challenging time. Of course, over the subsequent 3 decades, the country has evolved and developed rapidly to a level that is incomparable with 1993, and that's a very important change that I've observed. But the other change is very significant. In 1993, Uzbekistan was coming out of the Soviet Union. It had been a very closed region, a closed country, and of course a closed USSR. As a foreigner traveling to Uzbekistan in 1993, it was clear to me that I was exotic. I was a student. I was legally traveling through the country, taking buses, going to see Bukhara, Samarkand, Shahrisabz. But there was a sense of restraint. And 28 years later, of course, that has completely changed. The country has opened up in the last 4 years to tourism in a most transformational way, I would say. So to the extent that 2 years ago, a friend of mine in the UK, her daughter bicycled across Uzbekistan. That would have been unthinkable. And she was greeted everywhere with hospitality, but no sense of, there's a potentially dangerous foreigner. I think maybe there's one last point that to me is very interesting. In 1993, the people I met were very keen to show me the big monuments in Samarkand, in Shahrisabz. But there was not a sense of embracing the profoundly rich Islamic heritage of the country. There was not a sense of Imam al-Bukhari is someone we should revere, whose knowledge and learnings we can take away and build on. And I think that has also been a transformation. Clearly, in Soviet times, there was a very restrictive environment on religion issues, but also on some aspects of cultural heritage. And I think it's very interesting that today we're seeing a change in that respect. and an embrace of not only the monuments, but also the profound scientific, humanist and religious heritage that Uzbekistan can lay claim to.
In what areas has Uzbekistan been a good partner for the UN?
That's a good question. I think Uzbekistan has become an increasingly strong partner to the UN and an increasingly engaged UN member state. The UN, as you know, has 3 directions in its mandate: peace and security, human rights, and sustainable development. So let me structure my answer along those 3 lines. In the realm of peace and security, Uzbekistan, since independence, has been a beacon of stability. Let's say it like it is. It's been a stable country. What's changed in the last 4 years is that it's shifted from being a stable country that is looking inwards to a country that is reaching across borders to build collaboration, to build connectivity. The other day I was talking to Deputy Foreign Minister, and he said, we're trying to shift from a country that's landlocked to a country that's land-linked. And this is a concept that is also harking back across the millennia to the ancient Silk Roads. The idea of being a hub, of linking different regions, being at the heart of Europe and Asia, Central Asia, and being a crossroads. And I think that is very much aligned to the UN's vision of a world of collaboration, of partnership, of multilateralism, and where development follows from good neighborliness. And good neighborliness is a precondition of growth, of prosperity, and of peace. So I see that in the area of peace and security, the direction of Uzbekistan's recent policy shifts under President Mirziyoyev has really been aligned to this multilateralism, this connectivity agenda. And that's very rewarding to see. In the area of human rights, we have seen, of course, a lot of changes in the past few years. Uzbekistan's human rights record was challenging, let's be frank. And we've seen some very positive steps toward aligning to international obligations and commitments. Now, these steps have been recognized. We've seen that Uzbekistan has been elected by other member states to the Human Rights Council. This is a very, very important and significant event. But it comes with responsibility, of course, as well. And Uzbekistan made a number of voluntary commitments as part of its election campaign to the Human Rights Council. And so it will be important to see that those commitments are followed through. And these include, for example, some of the points articulated in the President's recent speech to the Human Rights Council, ratification of the Convention on the Rights of People with Disabilities, ratification of the optional protocol of the Convention Against Torture, and determined action to eradicate torture. I also think there needs to be follow through on the commitments made to enhance the enabling environment for public participation and civic space, civil society. We know that there has been a lot of positive efforts by the government, by ministries, by the parliament, the Oli Majlis, to engage more with the public. There have been public councils created, the presidential reception centres, etc. There is much more dialogue between people and government. But there are still many barriers to civic initiative groups being able to work in support of the development and the rights of the people in Uzbekistan. And I think the government has articulated a desire to change that. So I'm looking forward to working and supporting that effort. The third area in human rights where I think there is a clear political will, but there is also some steps that need to be taken, continued steps, is in the area of rule of law. And this is something that when I travel around the country, people talk about. They want to have their rights upheld in the courts. We've seen some very significant steps to strengthen the independence of the judiciary, to tackle corruption issues, and to enhance confidence in the law and the legal system. And we're very, very glad that the UN Special Rapporteur on the independence of judges and lawyers visited Uzbekistan and had a constructive dialogue with government, parliament, and with the judiciary and with civil society on steps that need to be taken. So I think taking those steps that he recommended in his report will strengthen Uzbekistan's achievements in the area of human rights, and it will also strengthen Uzbekistan's ability to continue on this important trajectory reform agenda, because without rule of law and without civic participation and without human rights, then sustainable development can't happen. The third area of cooperation with Uzbekistan is on sustainable development, and that's where, it's the heart of my work here in Uzbekistan. And we've seen so much positive change in the last few years. We have a very collaborative relationship with government, with academia, with parliament, with civil society, to try to advance and support Uzbekistan's achievement of its national sustainable development objectives. This is very clear because there's a global agenda that Uzbekistan has committed to, and that's Agenda 2030. And that's the Sustainable Development Goals with all other UN member states. And I think it's really important that Uzbekistan has adopted its national goals and targets. The step that we're working with government now is to integrate those targets into the legislation, the policies, the new strategies, because only through having evidence-based policy making linked directly to targets and indicators will the government be able to measure progress, and also the people be able to hold government to account for these targets that have been set to be achieved by 2030. This is a resource-short country, a country experiencing global warming at twice the average because of the loss of the Aral Sea, for example. So these elements is where the UN brings global expertise, global access to data, good practice, to support governments like the government of Uzbekistan to achieve prosperity that is inclusive, meaning women, young people, people with disabilities can have the same rights and opportunities, but not just inclusive, also green, so that the country that we leave to future generations is a country that is thriving environmentally and can sustain the people that live there with food, with water, with biodiversity. And of course, because environment and climate issues are global and interconnected, it can't just be one country that shifts away from coal or oil to wind power and solar. It has to be at the global level, global commitment. So that's why organizations like the UN are so important, helping to shift the world through the commitments that governments have made to a world that is prosperous but inclusive and green in its prosperity.
Well, thank you very much indeed for an exciting comments, for insightful conversation. Our guest today was the UN Resident Coordinator in Uzbekistan, Ms. Helena Fraser. Thank you.
Thank you. Katar Rahmat.
Thank you for being with us. Have a nice time watching news and analysis on Uzbekistan 24. Bye-bye.